Yes, you're listening to the Mental Health Check-In podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Myrick. You can call me Jim. I'm told it's easier to remember. And this is the very first episode. I thank you in advance for listening on whatever platform you may be listening to. And if you're watching the video version, I apologize in advance for the really bad quality camera I've got. I've probably got to do something about that, but hey, trial and error, first episode. So on this first episode, I have my guest, filmmaker Wendy McColm, who was a great chat to listen to. It's actually like an hour-long chat, but before I dive into that, I feel like I should introduce this podcast, introduce who I am, and why you may want to dedicate so much time to this. I'm going to try to not be too long. Me and Wendy McComb, we had a conversation that was an hour, and I don't want to call it an interview. I want to have guests I can have these serious conversations with, not necessarily an interview. We're just talking, and we talked a lot, and I don't want to make this any longer than it should be, but I'm going to try my best to explain who I am for those not familiar with it. To make it short, I do a lot of things. I write, I'm a journalist, I'm a photographer, and like a lot of people, I've been having a tough time during these tough times. Quarantine, lockdown, however you want to call it. It's been a tough last few months, and I've been going through a lot of feelings. Let's put it that way. Not very good feelings. And I mentioned it a little bit when I was talking to Wendy. But there was a point where I sat down with my thoughts and basically came to the conclusion I'm not okay. Maybe I'm still not okay. Maybe this is a coping mechanism for myself. But I realized I wasn't okay. And after stemming in these feelings and going through so much these last few months, a lot of it is internal. Other things were just bad things happening around me. Some of it's my fault. Some of it's just the way life goes. It's a whole lot has been going on. Again, I don't want to make this too long, so I don't want to dive too deep into it. And maybe a lot of what's been going on will come up reoccurring in different episodes, but first I try to snap myself out of it and tell myself I'm tired, and I'm just tired of being tired. And that worked for a while, but then just old feelings started coming back to the surface, essentially, for me. And I realized I wasn't okay again. And after doing some free writing, so to speak, without delving into too deeply of what I wrote down, just because I don't want to make this longer than it should be. Maybe this isn't the space to talk about such heavy stuff yet, but heavy stuff on my part, I guess. But I realized just how not okay I was, and something just hit me that told me I need to do something about it. And let's just say I didn't have much of a value, so to speak, for my own life, and it came coinciding with everything going on in the world, and pretty much the murder of George Floyd, may he rest in peace. I realized that, wow, America doesn't have much value for my own life either. And I felt called to action for the first time in my life. But, with COVID going around, I'm immunocompromised because of my asthma. I couldn't protest the way I wanted to. There's a lot of things that I can't do a lot of because I feel like I should care after my health a little bit more. So to make a long story short, I felt called to action in a lot of ways, but I couldn't do much, still can't do much action, I suppose. And that really put me into a mental slump again, even though like I kept trying to snap myself out by saying, as tired as I am, there's worse things in the world. And I don't recommend that type of thinking to invalidate your own feelings. That's some thinking I still need to get myself out of the habit of doing, but I felt like I still need to do something with this action, I suppose. And I can't explain how I came to this conclusion. It just kind of hit me out of nowhere, but that action told me to make a podcast because it seems like I said, a lot of people are dealing with these last few months in different ways and struggling in different ways. And I figured if, say, I don't know, something happens to me, if I die, however you want to put it, I want to leave something for other people to learn from, I guess. I want to help people is what I'm trying to say. As bad as I'm feeling, I imagine other people are doing worse. And I hope that in being open and honest and verbalizing my feelings, it could be something that listeners like yourself can relate to. And it can either help you with what you're going through or inspire you to look deep into yourself and figure out how to verbalize your own feelings and deal with your own emotions as much as you can. And like, it's been an interesting process. I've been going through this process of trying to get this podcast together for the last 3-4 weeks. I got Mache Stan, he's a rapper and producer, to do a theme song for this podcast. That's actually his voice that you hear at the beginning, and I appreciate him for doing that. I got Caitlin Noel, also local here in Detroit, to do the design for this podcast, and I appreciate her for that. But like it seemed like the closer I got to this podcast, the more I started having second thoughts about myself, and like fear is what hit me really. Like, not even just the fear of putting myself out there on a public platform for the world to see me and judge me, but if I even have the capabilities to do such a thing with such serious topics as mental health, even though I feel like this is something that everybody is dealing with their own mental health in these last few months, and there are conversations that need to be had, especially at this time. I wasn't sure if I had the tools to verbally communicate those feelings. And like, I don't want to be disrespectful in my approach. I don't want to be unintentionally disrespectful. I don't want to make it seem like I'm exploiting anybody or exploiting mental health. And like, I do see that a lot, even in these last few months. People basically see mental health as a paycheck to be cashed in on, and that's not what I want to do. And I was afraid that it could come off that way. But then I came across this video from Wendy McColm, who I've been following for so many years, and she put out this video about basically the flaws, everybody's flaws, and like all the issues that we're all collectively going through, about being what it means to be a perfect or good person. And that video really spoke to me, and that video gave me the plunge to really decide that this is something I not only want to do, but I have to do. I'll put a link in the description for that video if you haven't seen it, but I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend this conversation with Wendy that I'm about to just segue right into. I've rambled a lot already, and I'm sorry. I get long-winded unintentionally, and it's hard to work on that. But yeah, I'm just gonna stop rambling and just segue into our conversation. Welcome back to the Mental Health Check-in podcast, and we're here with my very first guest. I guess I'm very honored to have as the very first guest. She is a director, actor, filmmaker, producer, cinematographer, a whole bunch of amazing things. She is Wendy McColm. How are you, Wendy?
Hey, doing good, doing good. Thanks for asking me to be on your first podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for making that video. That's the one that really like struck a chord with me. The For those listening, I'm talking about your I'm bad with titles or remembering titles. How to be a good person or what is a perfect person? Is that correct?
Yeah, I just put that up because I think I'm experimenting with interviews and blogs and stuff lately. Yeah, just did like a segment sort of touching on a few points for this question we ask ourselves. Maybe I was like, am I the only one who
Mhm.
feels this way? Am I the only one who Googles how to be a good person, how to be a better person, how to be perfect as a person? Am I the only one who Googles that, basically?
It's definitely Googling probably helps. I wish I've Googled it before. I've just let it ruminate in my head too many times.
Oh
But
man, yeah, that's harsh. That hurts
Yeah,
you.
it's super hurtful. I've especially been doing it with like even just trying to like come together with this podcast because I've had this podcast idea ruminating for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've gotten someone to produce a design, then I had someone do music, and the closer the pieces came together, the more I started to just doubt myself,
Oh,
and then just like painful past memories and past trauma started coming to the surface, and I'm just
wow.
like,
I want to talk
uh,
about that.
oh, okay,
Because
let's.
I feel like that happens. I feel like when we're really close to success, or a newer version of a new level, we'd
Mhm.
say, in life, um, those trauma responses come back. They come in to get you, to stop you, because what I've discovered in my research for mental health is that it's your mind's way of protecting you. It's like, let me give you all these fears and doubts so you can't move. So you cannot go into the unknown because the unknown is scary for me. And that usually happens. So when you're saying all these trauma responses came up and doubts and fears, the closer you got to your aspiration, to your intuition, to your divine goodness. It's funny how it's not funny. It's horrible how that stuff comes up.
I know what you're trying to say, but I never thought of it like that. That really makes sense, and like, there's definitely like not just a trauma response, or is a trauma response, but I suppose there's a fear type of thing to it. Like, for whatever reason, this fear comes out of me, and like when I'm in fear, I doubt myself, or I just have these meltdowns basically, and the more I fear things, the more I either rush into things or push myself
Mm,
more than I should, or
mm.
I just recoil into my soul and I just slump into my bed and I just don't. I either do everything and too much or nothing at all, and it's like there's nothing in between there, you know?
Dude, I'm so feeling that. I feel that because for me lately, I've been digging into that feeling and trying to question it because I was in a huge depression and slump just like a week ago, last week. I mean, COVID is tough. I don't get to go do simple things that I forgot gave me joy, like go dancing or listen to live music. You know, I don't know. Like, there's some parts of COVID that's really easy and like this, you get to discover a lot, but there's a lot of parts that are hard and hopeless. Um, I feel like I've discovered lately that one, I don't say nice things to myself ever. And when I'm about to go to that next level of the unknown or following my divine truth, which your divine truth with this podcast. So I want to say before we move on, that congratulations, you're doing it.
Thank
Um,
you.
But like we do that. We do too much or too little. And I know in my experience, I do that because I'm afraid that if I don't do it all now, I will lose the energy and the will that I finally mustered up. So I better do it all. And then I don't breathe and I don't have a balance. And, it's kind of like, why do we do that? Why do we do that? Or we do nothing at all. We just have to stop because we want to live in our doubts. We want to live in our fears. Why do we do that? Other than, for me, I think it's what I said. It's the ego's way of protecting you from the unknown and you having to have faith in yourself, which having faith in yourself and thinking good things could happen, best case scenarios, for some reason is hard to do as a human.
Yeah, it's very tough. Before I respond to that, you just backtrack about a minute or two ago. You said you were in a depression about a week ago. First, I want to ask, are you
Yeah.
okay right now? Like, how are you feeling now?
Oh, God. I feel so much better. That was
Good.
hell. It was hell on earth.
Mhm.
Definitely, I had put myself into some positions like I don't talk to my family really, but I thought, hey, during COVID, this could be a good time to reconnect. And it's like I put myself into some positions where it just built up, like what I do when I get depression lately or before, like for the last year, is just called myself crazy. I'm like, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. You must be bipolar, like all these things, like really mean things. And I do now know a lot more. There's way more than that after this particular time last week. So I'll just kind of share that if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was thinking you're horrible. I was saying all these mean things, and this is like the discipline we were taught as children. It comes back. My father used to call me crazy. My dad used to compare me to my mom, and that's a whole other sexism, narcissism story. But that's the narrative my brain was taught as a child. So we definitely go there in times of depression or when we're thinking we're disciplining ourselves and learning by disciplining. And I'll get back to why I'm saying that in a second. So I had that build up. I had to realize, oh, you were hanging out with your dad who never acknowledges you and never, ever asks you a question and just talks for like a monologue about like maybe a soda can, like something that just doesn't, it's crazy. It is so insane, but like I'm like, I have compassion, I can handle this, I'll just be his daughter. But it's okay. So you have a few hangouts of that and not acknowledging it. I just was like, that was normal. Okay. Okay, so these are the things we don't acknowledge, that there are things happening in our daily life that are traumatic. Then I had a friend fall out 2 in a row, actually. The ghosting thing, the cancel somebody. One I think was more something I could have been better at, but I think that as a friend, when you think about it later, you're like, why did it blow up so quickly? And that aspect made me sad. It made me feel like a horrible person, but then I had to tell myself, like, well, you're not perfect. This is after 3 days of depression. I'm like, oh, okay, this is making sense. And then the second fallout of a friend, that was really strange. Somebody I really liked, I tried to work with, but I think the work dynamic was not as good as the friendship dynamic. And I asked him to please respect me. And I think sometimes when you speak up like that, people get really, I don't know. He went off on a monologue that was very hurtful. He attacked my character. It was kind of like deflecting. But that really put a lot of childhood trauma back into my brain. Like, oh, you're wrong. You shouldn't have spoken up. Like I went through so all those things combined set me into the depression. It's really good to know what is setting you into your depression versus calling yourself horrible names, thinking you're a bad person, and disciplining yourself to learn. And what I learned through this and is a few things, which is things like this pass. They need time. Everything needs time. Communication needs time. And these days that come that are so bleak, they do pass in time. And it was only 3 days later that I started to see a light again. And then I had to physically tell myself, even though I didn't want to because I was so depressed, I was like, you're not depressed anymore. I had to just say that. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. And then I learned about a thing called joyous discipline. Have you ever heard of that?
The term's new to me. Can you expand on it?
So, and I'm a big mental health buff. So that's why also I wanted to do your podcast because I've been studying about abuse and all these things for the last 4 years. Joyous discipline is a compassionate way to speak to yourself when you're learning a lesson. You know, it's really easy for us to revert into really hurtful, painful words, to not reach out to people who may love us, for us to think we're alone and we're not allowed to ask for help. But all of that is compassionate, and you can actually learn more and grow more when you are compassionate to yourself. Though it's harder than me just saying a word, a phrase, but joyous discipline is what a phrase that I just learned this time around, actually.
How do you get to that phase of joyous discipline, especially when you're in like the middle of a depression now?
Woo-hoo! There's an awareness, I think. It's like as soon as I knew I was going into a depression, I turned on my affirmations. You can Google, YouTube affirmations. You can be like, affirmations for doubts. You can type in anything. Affirmations for being kind to yourself. No, they don't really work, but they don't not work. Like, they're not going to solve your problem. But what affirmations do is, okay, for example, one negative word cancels out 6 positive words. Did you know that? So
I never thought about it.
well, these are things, like I said, I'm a huge buff. I researched this stuff because I was like, how do you retrain your brain? Because we're conditioned as people. So when you get conditioned with, you've heard too many negative words, let's say you're in an abusive relationship, you're going to hear a lot of abusive words. I've gone through that. And how do you come out of it? You have to cancel out that one negative word with a bunch of nice ones. And you're not going to have the willpower to do that when you're depressed. So sometimes you just got to lay the hell down and just put those headphones in and be like, I can be neutral. I can at least be neutral right now, because me going down that road right now in the state I'm in is not going to help anybody. You know, and if you had to write that down on your wall, take some time. It's gonna change in a few days. Telling yourself you have a lot of time, I think, is important. And then, you wait it out. You kind of wait it out, but you have to do little things like that, like tell yourself you're allowed to be depressed. There's something going on. I'm not going to say anything mean to myself. I'm going to listen to these affirmations. I don't have the will to live. That's extreme, but honestly, that happens sometimes. And in a few days, you kind of start seeing the light, but as soon as you see little trickles of it, you got to let it in. You got to say, I'm not depressed, even though it could be a lie, but your mind doesn't know. So, and then from there, you start working it out. What led to this? Do I have the willpower to want to change, to know, oh, maybe I shouldn't see my dad anymore. That would be good. Like finding these things out about ourselves. It's uncomfortable. It takes work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. And I think I might have practiced using such affirmations in the last few months without maybe realizing it. Because I did kind of get myself out of a depression. It was a really long, really bad depression it was just an array of bad things just happening in my life all at once, back to
Yeah.
back. And after basically just 2.5, maybe 3 months of just moping so much and feeling like I don't have the time to reassess my emotions or
Mhm.
actually care for myself, it kind of just hit me one day, and I told myself I'm tired of being tired, and suddenly it was like this, I guess, this weight off my shoulders. Like I had an anvil off my back for the past 3 months. I just pushed it off. Like I guess that's the power of affirmations, right? Or is it,
Yeah.
would that count as an affirmation?
Yeah. What did you say to yourself?
It was looking back on it in retrospect, I may have invalidated my feelings a little bit because
Ooh,
after, yeah,
speak to
that's,
that. That's a
yeah,
big one.
yeah.
Invalidating your own feelings.
Yes, that's something I had to unlearn. Maybe I'm still unlearning too, but after I told myself I'm tired of being tired, I basically told myself things could be worse, and like there's a million different things that a million different people are going through worse situations, and that's actually like a reoccurring thing for myself over the years that I've always minimized my pain or
Mm,
just invalidate myself. And I've had people tell me that I shouldn't do that, but it's I don't know where
not
it comes
good.
from. It's just
Oh,
I can't dig it out myself, you
it
know?
comes from childhood. We're taught to be quiet. My father used to tell me when I cried that I needed to go sleep in the garage till I was done.
Jeez.
Yeah. So these little things, and that's an extreme one, but I'm just saying it as an example.
Mhm.
Why do we suppress our feelings as adults? There's little
Yeah.
there's little things like toughen up.
Yeah.
Things you're taught as a boy, toughen up. You have to be like a man. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, why do you think most men are emotionally unavailable? You have to unlearn that.
Mhm.
And to protect ourselves, going back to protecting, our brain will be like, well, if I just go silent, just like I did when I saw my father,
Mhm.
I can get through this. I will be unseen. I will not get in trouble. And it's like, that doesn't work anymore. That worked when we were children. And unfortunately, just like I said, the one negative thing cancels out six positive things. Imagine 18 years or however long you're with your parents.
Mhm.
That's what conditioning is. You have to cancel it out. So that's a lot of undoing and unlearning and being conscious when you're suppressing your feelings and finding ways. I mean, when you're awakening to that, and that's a kind of like what my video is, it's like me having breaking points. I have constant breaking points because navigating how to come out and start speaking and knowing when to share your emotions, knowing how to share them in a healthy way, which again is messy, and people are very unforgiving. You're meeting people in walks of life who are still suppressing themselves, and you're meeting people who are awakened, and all that's in between. And I don't think that's ever going to be, I think I want to stress that point. I don't think it's ever going to be easy. Um, and there's always going to be breaking points. Like you might go through one tomorrow. I'm going to go through one next week, like guaranteed, because
Mhm.
as we talk about it and we're unpacking it, you see how much the human brain has to process, has to go into a depression, which is deep rest. It's like, it's a lot. And yeah, you're going to have breakdowns for the rest of your life. Someone told me once, you don't sweep the floor one time and and it's clean forever. And I think we forget that when we have breakdowns.
That's an interesting way to put it. The whole mop scenario. That is very interesting. And backtracking to your video a little bit that you mentioned, I guess I want to ask, what can you say to listeners who, because like you and I have been able to unpack things either through this podcast or through your YouTube video. what can you say people who may not necessarily have an outlet to, or even feel comfortable to
Mm,
allow themselves to be vulnerable in the
yeah.
public setting or an outlet like this? How do they unpack their traumas then to
Whew.
themselves or to anyone else?
There's a lot of ways. And I'm still learning myself. So I'm like, I'm sitting here and I'm able to converse with you, but I just want to make it clear to everybody that I'm still learning every day how to do it. And anyone else who doesn't say that verbally, they also are doing that. So we just need to also remember, I think, on top of while we're discovering that everybody who is trying is struggling and like learning daily. I'm definitely no expert. And so that being said, there is some things I can suggest, and I hope can be helpful. Um, there's a lot of Instagrams that you can follow for women and men. I don't see a issue with it being you can follow it as a man. I know it's called Sad Girls Club. It's for younger girls. I think men and non-gender binary and trans, anybody could follow it. Um, it's basically like they point out things and they make things seem real. They talk about being sad and how it's okay. They give you resources of free resources to reach out to if you need someone to talk to. Sometimes that's what you can do if you don't have access to a therapist. Now, if you do have money and you have access to a therapist, by all means, that is a wonderful outlet. You're not crazy if you go to a therapist. That is some sort of myth. I'm sure some emotionally unavailable man made up. No offense to men. So they wouldn't have to go. It's just the conditioning just to make us afraid to wake up because that one person who was scared didn't want to wake up. And that's where all abuse and all that stuff comes from too. But you can literally just Google low cost therapy, and you can find sessions. If you tell them you don't have an income, you can tell them you don't have an income and get sessions as low as $35 per session. There's attainable ways to do it, and they're doing it through video chats now if that's more comfortable for people. Now, things at home you can do. This may sound simple, and maybe you won't do it, but I hope you will. Free journaling, free writing every morning, and committing to it. Like really knowing that this will make a difference in my life. Write a note on your next to your bed saying, "Wake up, your heart will win. Go write your journal. I promise you'll feel better after that." Doing that, not being ashamed to write things like that, reminders. We go through a lot as humans, and to expect us to like not, I expect us to remember that we feel that way about something, especially when we know we're going to wake up and be sad. Come on. There's no shame in that. It's beautiful. Tell yourself that's beautiful. So when I say free journaling, free writing, I mean, you may not want to write anything. You may not. So you just write and this is the important part, without judgment. Okay? With no judgment. No one's going to read it. No one's going to see it. No one's going to think you're a bad person. There's just no judgment. You have to remember that. And sometimes as you're beginning to do it, like your first 3 or 4 days in a row, you'll notice you're trying to sugarcoat it. Like, I'm having a great morning and I'm a good person and coffee's nice. And it's like, yeah, but actually I'm pissed and I hate everyone, and you got to write everything. Okay? Do it for 10 minutes. Do a timer. Even if it's like, I don't know what I'm going to write right now. I'm just going to write. And, but then something will come up and you're like, actually, I feel really sad about the other day. And, maybe I'll do this today. Yeah, that'll sound good. Okay. I'm sad. You're valid to be sad. I'm doing the example really detailed because it's important. Because if you continue to do this, I promise you, after a few days, a few things will happen. You will begin to trust yourself. Why? Because you're not invalidating yourself, because you're not judging yourself. Okay, so it's a secret way to validate your own feelings and practicing that without any judgment. And no judgment on self is a really big important thing, because when you learn to do that, which takes time and consistency, that's why I'm saying 10 minutes a day. When you learn to do that, you begin to hear things like, I want to make a podcast. You begin to hear things like, I want to make a short film. You begin to hear that, and you begin to trust it, because there's no doubts blocking you. So that's just one little way. And then, of course, I like to meditate. There's guided meditations on YouTube. And it's sometimes hard to commit to, but every time I do it, I feel so much better. So it's like you have the resistance because your brain doesn't want you to succeed, because that negative part of you wants to win, aka save you, which it doesn't. But you have to remember that it doesn't save you. And last thing, there's a great audiobook, because if you're like me, I don't like to physically read things. I like to physically read poetry, but not books. I just can't do it. There's a beautiful book called The Untethered Soul. Okay, and then the YouTube is on. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. And there's another one called You Are a Badass. There's another audiobook. Those are very inspirational. And have a spirit animal. These Instagram people or YouTube people as our guiders, I have to say, there's much more people in history that can inspire you. Have a spirit animal. Mine are Maya Angelou, Fiona Apple, and Frida Kahlo. Like, I think about them, like they would do it. Or I have like, what would David Bowie do right now? So there's little things, and they don't always save me, these things. But if you're consistent and you just try, you're going to see some changes happening in your soul and yourself.
I like that spirit animal idea.
It's cool. Who would yours be?
I gotta think about that. I have
Come
no
on.
idea.
We gotta know. We gotta know.
I want to say Prince, but I just like Prince. So I don't
Oh,
know.
Prince is tight. I saw Prince
Yeah.
live.
Oh, really? How was that?
Yes. Prince did 8 encores. 8.
Wow. I'm not even
Because
surprised because it's Prince.
because he loved what he did.
Right.
He didn't give a crap about what people would think if he was
Mhm.
too much for coming out 8 times. He was like, no, I love music.
Mhm.
And guess what? I'm going to show all of you that you can do whatever you want.
I dig
Yeah.
that.
That's
I
why
really dig that.
that's why I also love Prince.
Hmm. Yeah, Prince was amazing. And to backtrack a little bit, I can definitely attest to the whole journaling idea because I've done in like the last 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks, I've been journaling a little bit myself. And like I've noticed that when you just write write down how you feel and just free write, you start to unlock doors and like you start to realize that things I thought I was over, I may not be over. I
Mm,
may still be dealing with like internally, or I may be projecting in ways I shouldn't. And it's a rewarding experience. It's tough because you have to deal with that new information. You have to deal with the fact that I may not be okay mentally right now, or
yeah,
I'm things are tougher than I'm really laying on for myself, or
yeah.
things are tougher than I'm giving the space and the time to.
Mm,
But I feel like I've knowing that knowledge and dealing with it in different ways and like connecting dots, connecting spider webs, I think that I'm growing as a person in a good way?
sounds like it.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that. I think the unlocking doors and really taking a look at yourself. Yeah, you should feel proud that you've been journaling, you said, for the last few weeks, and now you're doing this. It's like, yeah, and then we'll repeat that a whole cycle again. tomorrow.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. It's a good cycle. And
that's good. It's good to say it's a good cycle. I think that's
yes.
really kind of you,
Hmm.
and a voice that we should all hear. Like, this is a good thing, a good cycle. Yeah, I
Thank
want to take that with me.
thank you. Backtracking, I've been backtracking a lot. I'm
I love the
sorry.
backtrack. It's good to backtrack. Like, why do we have to like continue, like always go forward? It's like there's some stuff in there.
Right. Going back to your video a little bit, like that video you did talk about like how it is difficult to make connections with people, especially now where you've got social distance and whatnot. And like there's this fear of being like ghosted and canceled. But you said something really interesting that I never heard before. Like you said that basically friendship is meeting people in the middle. And I thought that was really interesting. Like
Oh.
how do you know when you met someone in the middle?
Ah, that's interesting. You never heard that before.
Mm-mm.
God damn, what happened to us? Like, what the hell? I'm
That's
just
the
so,
question.
I thought I was the only one who didn't learn that, just due to lacking of, like I said, parental guidance growing up. But to hear you say that, that alarms me. Okay, so what is that? I'm still learning myself. So, take this for what you will, and we can converse about it, your take on it. But when I got out of, I was in a very abusive situation 4 years ago, which I did say on my video. I'm probably going to speak out about it because I'm now learning that that's okay. I can do that. But I had to go to therapy 2 times a week to like just stand up again. And that therapist told me this, that the thing is what you're saying is meeting halfway. How do we know when that's happening? And how do we know when we're overreacting? And how do we know? We don't. That's what I'm saying. I'm still learning it. But one analogy he gave me was the ping pong. Um, when you say something, instead of like, let's say you're codependent. I don't know if you know the term codependent. Usually they pick up a lot of the slack. They like fill in the blanks,
Hmm.
uh, talk a lot, just to make sure that everyone's comfortable. And abusive people really like that person because they get to just look at you and not say anything and gather their information to manipulate you. Yeah, pretty horrible. And
Hmm.
that person who's talking all the time doesn't notice it because they're used to being that way, right? Because
Hmm.
it protects them from finding out that person's opinion. It protects them from finding out that person's feelings. All in all, horrible in a way to grow a friendship, especially if that person's abusive and you don't know till later. But let's say that other person's not abusive. How are you supposed to ever have a give and take? Like, it's like asking questions. How are you? The other person says how they're doing. And then if they don't say, well, how are you?
Hmm.
Then you kind of notice, like, I wonder. You shouldn't like freak out right away. It's just something that you're like noticing, just
Hmm.
noticing. And being very compassionate about it. Sometimes you should give like somebody like 3 or 4 hangouts to really see they're consistent. Maybe they're shy the first time. Okay, but let's do it again. Do they call me? Do I call them back? When they call me, do they ask me about my day? And then I tell them, they listen, they don't interrupt me, and I ask them about their day, and then we're feeling good. We're like taking turns, right?
Hmm.
I think that's a really nice way to find out if someone is there for you. But if one person's doing all the talking or one person is doing all the asking, there's a amount of emotional unavailability there because there's no chance of finding out how someone feels. or, and if you are a person who likes to be vulnerable or emotionally available because that's the person you've decided to be, you may not really enjoy being super close to that person. You might make them a casual friend. There's also like a chart where there's like really close friends I can trust with my feelings. People I kind of like and hang out with, but I don't tell them my feelings. And then there's like outer circle, somebody I say hi to. You can be the judge of that. But like to go cancel someone, freak out on them, that's what I don't get. It's like meeting someone in the middle, you find out who they are, you allow them to be who they are, but you have to pay attention. Oh, this person doesn't like feelings, but they like going to the beach and throwing ball. Okay, they'll be in my second circle of friends. Versus like, you don't listen to my feelings. It's like they're not capable. They showed you that. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. It's really kind of to find out and share vulnerably. How much vulnerability do you want as a person? Do you want any? You don't have to have any. If you like not having it, you get to find out if that person has it or not.
Mm-hmm. Is it wrong to say maybe you should, or maybe I should ask, is it possible to go at this person's pace? Because let's assume that rather than being emotionally unavailable, they've been in multiple abusive relationships, and as a result, they're hesitant.
Yes.
They're hesitant to share themselves with someone else, share their experiences, share their feelings, share their emotions, because it's just gone south so many times. What then? Is it worth taking that chance with someone, or is it just is it like a toxicity there?
I think you can find out over time, but it takes communicating. It would take communicating and not over communicating, because you really have to pay attention to how much they're meeting you. If they're like meeting you about right here, and that's fine for you for now, pay attention. Does it stay there? Does it go like this? Is it inconsistent? But if you're like, let's say they are hesitant, and that's not wrong, it's just where they're at.
Right.
But like, how horrible and uncomfortable is it that you're like talking so much and making them comfortable and doing all this work and trying to meet them over here? It's like a lot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, pay attention. If it's about right here and that's comfortable for you, that's totally okay. You know what I mean? And then over time, maybe 3 or 4 hangouts come and you feel like you've been a good friend, you've been comfortable. You can then take it to the next level and kind of be like, hey, I've kind of noticed, it's kind of like a careful situation. Like, I'd love to be a little more open with you, or I hear more about your feelings. Is there a reason, like, you seem a little hesitant about sharing your feelings, and I just want to let you know as a friend, I care about you and I kind of want to become closer. Is there any reasons for that? And see if they meet you. See if they're capable of saying, I can't. See if they're capable of saying, like, yeah, it's just something I won't do. And then whatever they say, you have to respect it. You have to be like, okay. But if they say something manipulative, like, oh, I can do that, and then they do it once but never again, you have to pay attention to that. You have to be like, oh. And then you have to ask yourself, like, going back to me and my dad, can I be comfortable with him or her meeting me here? Or is it going to set me into depression later because I truthfully need this?
Yeah.
So it's and none of that is simple. It's not like there's a cut, dry answer. The simplest way to put it is time. Whenever you feel like you're lacking time and you're about to cancel someone or explode, ask yourself if you think you have time and if you feel safe. And I feel like that's a lot of the reason people get canceled lately is like people don't feel safe. They feel like if they don't do it now, they're going to be in danger,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you might be, but hopefully you have other friends you can reach out to and check.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully your free journal is maybe showing how you've been feeling about this person. Don't invalidate yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to cancel someone. You can just move them to the next circle, which is friend who's kind of cool. I can see them sometimes while I'm around other friends. See how I feel then. And if it's still uncomfortable, then that might be a time for you to mention it to them, or some people prefer not to mention it because they don't think it's worth it. I think that's the saddest part about humanity. I wish that people could talk to people about what bothered them, because even if you didn't stay friends, maybe that later down the line could sink in with that person and maybe they could have a chance at being better. But that's a whole nother conversation. Like, all these are very deep conversations, but that's what I would just kind of hope, because I don't know, sometimes in retrospect, I wish somebody would have told me something if there was something that I could have learned. But
Mm-hmm.
then again, some people don't have the articulation or words themselves to tell that person. So it's not anyone's fault. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
So I'll even say that it's not even for certain people at least. I think that it's a case of just it's hard to open up in a certain way. Like it's hard to say you said something that made me uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or it's hard to say that it's hard to, just have those conversations. And some people will have those conversations. Other people would rather just ghost you because it's easier than just having those uncomfortable questions and articulations.
I think that's so unfortunate, but I get it.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate, but I get it. And like sometimes I ghost people, but it's usually after, like, God, I hate to admit it, but I will. I mean, like, I had this one guy who's multiple times had toxic masculinity to me, and I've like told him, like, you can't talk to me like that. It's just not good. Like,
Hmm.
it's just like, you won't be treating me this way, man. And I felt comfortable enough to say that to him. We would go through that every so often as friends until finally he just sent me the most insane thing on Instagram. And I was like, F you. And I, look,
Hmm.
but I said, F you, I'm done with the toxic masculinity. Duh.
Right.
And I'm not proud of that, but it was literally like it happened so many times that it was starting to get in my head that I felt like I was able to just say F you, like, because it was starting to mess with me. So,
Well,
uh,
in that case, I think that's when like ghosting can be understandable, or it might even be necessary if you've had this type of conversation with the same person over and over and over and over and over again, then either there's something that's just not clicking with them, or they just don't care and they're intentionally being mentally and emotionally abusive. And when they're being intentionally and it's clear, if that intent is clear that they're being emotionally and mentally abusive, then that's when you have to cut someone off for the sake of your mental health. So you're not up late at night just over stressing about things.
yeah, and it makes you, if somebody's repeatedly a certain way, it can elicit doubts in
Mm-hmm.
oneself. It's already hard enough to live and have faith in yourself, is how I see
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, but yeah, even my friend that exploded at me the other day, before he totally ghosted, he said some pretty valid things to me.
Mm-hmm.
He took a few things off the deep end. I don't think it's ever okay to attack someone's character or like
Right.
use very personal things against someone. I think that is abusive.
Mm-hmm.
But he was mad, so I, even though we're not talking, I forgive that part. But I do see where he was coming from on his anger. And he pointed out a few things that I saw like, oh, I could see how this person could see me as repeating a behavior. And I
Can I
wish,
button for a second? I'm
yeah,
sorry, I hate to cut you off, but I don't want you to, and maybe like this is just me as an outsider not knowing the full context of the conversation, but I don't want you to feel like you necessarily like just because you see where he was coming from, it shouldn't validate what he did to you. Because if he's angrily
oh,
just shooing, like using your own anger and emotion against you, then that's just not okay. I'm sorry. I just had to say that. That's just
thank
me
you.
sticking my nose in, but it's
That's so sweet of you. Yeah, this is how I usually handle things. I'm like, it was all my fault, and I get it. So he's excused. Like,
yeah, I've been there.
thank you. I mean, like, I wanted, I wanted to learn. I don't think I should have been so harsh on myself, because I went to a dark place. But I do see. I'm grateful that before he just totally canceled me, he said a few valid things between the very, very painful using my family and all kinds of stuff against me. Very hurtful. He wasn't completely valid to blow up, but like he had some built up things, which is also why I encourage people to say something the first time if somebody is doing something that bothers you versus hold it in, let it repeat, because the other person, and this is what I mean by the ping pong. You'll never know if that other person could have changed and respected you,
Hmm.
you know? But
Yeah.
you get to have this narrative like, I'm powerful, I'm going to block them because I know how to respect myself. And it's like, well, you're actually not being vulnerable to the chance that this person could change and be there for you. So, like, I'm not saying I would have been there because
Mm-hmm.
I could have kept messing up. I don't know what I would have done, but the thing is, I didn't have an opportunity. And this thing that happened with us, the ghosting, the cancel, happened all with a matter of minutes. Like when he was telling me this stuff, I was like, yeah, I get it. I'm sorry. Oh, wait, I don't know. Like it was just
Hmm.
crazy. And then it was done. But he did say a thing or two that I did learn from. I'll be honest. And I am, as much as there was whatever, you don't need to call it here or there, I got to at least learn something. It was hard because he said a lot of mean things that were kind of abusive, but in that there was a few truths, and I kind of chalked it up like he's mad. But there was some things I got to learn from, and so that's what I mean by like trying to say something before you totally dip, because even me saying, hey, enough toxic masculinity, F you, at least there was like a hint of why I said F you. Like,
Right.
I don't know if he'll learn from that. That wasn't like the best thing I could have said, but you know what I mean?
Right.
So I will say just personally, as much as now that I'm even talking about it, I'm like, I'm kind of angry, but
Mhm.
I am glad that at least the tiniest thing that at least was left was a little thing that I could learn from. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from the sounds of it, I think you did the right thing. Like he may or may not have learned anything, but that's his chips to bargain with, basically. That's something that he has to deal with. If you have to go out of your way to try to make him understand something, especially when he goes out of his way to use personal traumas against you, then that's a problem. And it, I just want to say, I think you did the right thing.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like it's messy, but I guess being open and vulnerable, as much as these situations are sad or painful, I think it's helpful for anybody watching who may be thinking they're the only one who gets in fights or moments like this. It's not easy to navigate, and yeah, that's all there is really to say about that. It's just not easy, and it's sad. It makes me sad, but
Yeah. It's not easy, but it's necessary, you know?
Yeah, and then yeah, and hopefully you become friends with people who like to communicate is like a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you kind of know that going into friendships, which I'm still trying to understand how to do that. Um it makes it easier. And then also learning to just say sorry and understanding that no defense is needed. Like you can just say sorry and your friends will be like, "Sounds good." Like it's literally sometimes that easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'm sorry. And then like letting them be mad for a second. Hopefully they don't. If they start using personal things against you, then it's too far. Never.
Right.
I would never do that. That is
Mm-hmm.
like a hard no. Even
Right.
Fiona Apple sings about that in her songs. But like, but like, yeah, just literally saying sorry. I think people are afraid of apologies, but I
Mm-hmm.
would always say like apologies just mean you're down to party. It doesn't mean you're wrong or a bad person. It just means you're down to party. You're down to keep going in the friendship, in the party.
I like the sound of that, and I think you make an excellent point there because one thing I'm learning is that like it's hard. It's not so much it's hard to say sorry, but it's hard to not get defensive because you can say sorry, but either you may personally say or someone who needs to apologize says, "I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to do this," or "I'm sorry, but XYZ." And some apologies there shouldn't be a but, like you said, or there doesn't need to be a but. Like some
Exactly.
sometimes you just need to say sorry and keep it pushing. And it's hard, it's really hard to get to that point where you just need to say sorry and just learn from that. It's hard because it's natural human reaction to just get defensive, and it's being defensive just turns into this roadblock of just you're both on your toes basically,
Yes.
and even the person apologizing feels like they have to be on their toes, or they think the other person's overreacting. It's some people need to understand that sometimes you just need to say sorry. I think I'm slowly learning that like that you just need to say sorry and everything's okay after that.
Right? Like, why?
Hmm.
So that's like a thing to touch on. I mean, like, yeah, I'm so guilty of it too. But that's why I also urge let people have time before you cancel them. In that 3-minute conversation, it could turn around within like after a process because our natural thing is to be like, oh, we're gonna lose our friends. We're gonna, it's like, and this it's just the
Yeah.
most innocent, stupid thing. Why we're being defensive
Hmm.
because it's like, oh, I don't want to lose my friends. They're gonna hate me. They're gonna think I'm a bad person. So let me say a bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
I'm guilty too, and I'm a full blown adult.
Yes.
But usually after like a few moments, I can go, okay, yes, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
I was wrong. I didn't mean it. But then by then, people, like you said, are on their toes, and then
Hmm.
they're ready to get you because you're not listening to them. And it's like, oh, I just wish we are all so traumatized, and we're learning how to wake up that, and we read all these little blips online being like, cut out those toxic people, and it's like
Hmm.
come on, man. Like,
Hmm.
give it 5 minutes. Give it like a minute or
Hmm.
like nobody's good at that. But
Hmm.
yes, I was just talking to a friend today who I'm glad she called me to vent to me. I feel like, okay, I get to be there for my friend. I'm glad. Like, this is great. And after the end of her vent, um, I was kind of like, well, I could see where he's coming from. I'm glad that she was actually receptive to me being honest. I was like, ego, because some people don't like that. But like, I was like, well, if you did that to me, I'd be mad at you. I'd
Hmm.
be mad at you. Did you say sorry to him? And I told her I was learning with her as she was talking to me because I'm like, oh God,
Hmm.
I do this. I do this too. She did this thing that would have made me mad. Okay. And so obviously made the person that she did it to mad. But when the person got mad, she explained for a while. But I had to do this because I knew you would convinced me to go and I wasn't comfortable, so I had to do that. So like, how does that sound, right? Like when you're
Right.
hurt, like you just want to hear sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if she just said sorry, she would have to do the ping pong, going back to that. She'd have to
Yes.
let that dude be mad
Mhm.
and just say I understand.
Mhm.
Because
And
what I
that's
did was, though what I did was valid, I can understand how it made you mad. So I got to let you be mad. And then hopefully, because I said sorry, a few days later, you say sorry.
mhm.
Both people should say sorry, but there has to be a time, right, for there to be
Mm.
feelings.
Mm.
I don't know. That's what I took from our phone call today. I was like, damn, you could just like suck it up and say, I understand. You're mad.
Yeah. And like it's really hard to get to that point because like we've been talking about people get on their toes and you dig yourself in a hole like you're afraid to lose that friend so you might come on too strong trying to maintain a friendship and the harder you try to maintain a friendship ends up breaking that friendship.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I've done it recently.
It's so sad. It's just that we're also traumatized. We're like, this person must be toxic. But it's like, really, it's like, no, I just want to be your friend so bad.
Yeah, it's tough, but we're learning, you know.
I mean, yeah, I hope this podcast and more of your podcasts help show the truths like this. I mean, even me leaving this podcast, I'll be like, damn, what's right? I don't know. But
Hmm.
I just know in simplest terms,
Hmm.
time, you have time. All good things need time. That is just like, if I ever get overwhelmed with learning a bunch of lessons, I say that. And among other things, I think that really makes me feel like I can stop. And whenever you take that time, you can make decisions that are thoughtful. And definitely, I'm hitting like 4 out of 10, but we're trying.
We're trying to amazingly very well said, and I think that's the perfect point to end this podcast on.
Yeah. Well, this was great, and I really am. I don't know if I is it appropriate to say proud of you. I'm like I don't know you,
Oh,
but
I I I appreciate the proudness. Thank you so much. That really means a lot.
oh yeah, no, I'm so proud of you, and I think totally keep going and trust in yourself that your truth will bring solace to some people, and even even if it's just me and you learning with each other,
Mhm.
that's all you need, one person. Like so, I hope you keep going, even if you feel doubt, and reach out if you're like, I'm doubting myself again. I mean, I know you don't know me, but like, or reach out to a friend, reach out to someone you admire, and hey, I emailed you back right away because, what the hell? Why not?
And I appreciate that. Fingers crossed there's more episodes people can learn from. I just want listeners to have like these big takeaway messages to like help themselves heal too. Like we're all in this just healing together, I think. So
Yes.
hopefully we can all heal together. And though before we end this podcast, there was one thing I want to say. I want to make a habit of giving people their flowers, so to speak, while they're here. Like, and
Oh,
I want to do that for like all of my guests. And since you're my guest, if there is ever a case where we never speak again, or I don't know, I die tomorrow or something
oh
crazy like that,
my
but like I just want you to know that this, first off, this just means the world to me that you were so willing to be my first guest. That means so much to me, and I don't know if you could tell this whole podcast, but as a fan of yours, I've just been kind of starstruck. Like this is still very surreal to me. I think you are a fantastic creative mind. You are you create incredible work on YouTube. Big fan of that Thing in the Ground, the
God.
Everfull movie, Birds Without Feathers. I thought that was just
Oh, you saw it?
yes. it was wacky, but it was just so good. Like all these wacky characters, it was just so unique, and like you did something so special with that, and I hope you never lose that light inside of you to create, be enlightened, enlighten other people, and just you're a magnificent soul, and I 10,000 times thank you so much for everything, and I hope your journey in life is just continues to be incredible.
Thank you. And I hope the same for you. And I know you're going to make more. Come on now.
Fingers crossed.
No, you say it now. Say it here. You proclaim one more episode at least.
Okay, one more episode at least.
Yeah. Hey, I'm here. I'm here. So let me know when you, yeah, post this and stuff. But I'm grateful to have gotten to talk to you today. So thank you so much. And thank you for my flowers.
And that's episode 1 in the books. Thank you for listening, and again, thank you, Wendy McColm, for stopping by as a first guest. I really appreciate it. You can follow her work and everything she's on social media, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Follow her films. She's got a movie on Amazon Prime called Birds Without Feathers. Check that out. It's all great stuff. Before I sign out, I want to say thank you to Stanley Mache Stan, the producer who composed the theme song for his podcast. You can commission him for music on Instagram at webmachete. Thank you to Caitlin Noel for doing the artwork for this podcast. I appreciate that so much. You can commission her for artwork. Caitlin.noel.art on Instagram. And overall, I just hope this helps somebody. I hope this podcast helped inspire you to have conversations that we all probably should be having, either with ourselves or with other people. And I think if there's at least one takeaway you can have from this podcast or just this episode, it's that your feelings are valid. And if you're like me and you're not doing okay in these weird times, you will be okay. I'm not okay, but I will be okay. Feelings are valid, but they are not final. And everyone should take the space, create a space to communicate those feelings. It could be by free writing or just thinking to yourself. But free writing really helps. Just write down exactly what you're going through. And then when you come to the conclusion, I'm not okay, figure out how you're going to be okay. Be it by taking up therapy, talking to a friend, talking to family members, checking yourself into a psychiatric facility, which there's no shame in that at all. But make sure that you have to deal with those feelings before they get worse. No matter how small those not okay feelings are, you have to nip those feelings in the bud early on. You've gotta think of your mind as like a car. If you hear a rumbling from the engine or from the tire, you can't ignore that. It sounds like something's bad with your car. You can't ignore that. If you do, the problem's only going to get worse until the car eventually breaks down. And think of your mind that way. Like you've got, just like how you have to take your car to a shop as soon as you hear a problem. You gotta find a way to overcome whatever you're going through. And believe me, the worst feelings and emotions you'll go through, they can be overcome. You just have to, you gotta put in the work to do it. And it's a tough process. It might require help. Definitely requires help, I think. But you gotta take the space to do it, I think. And so I don't know how to outro this podcast. So again, just thank you. If there's ever a point you think I need to elaborate on something, or if you have questions for me, or feel like I spoke out of term, or I didn't communicate something to the best of my abilities, because I'm open to communication. I'm open to criticism. Sorry. Um, Especially since this is the first episode. So if you have anything for me, you can DM the podcast at Mental Health Check-In Pod on Instagram, or Check-In Pod on Twitter, Mental Health Check-In Pod at gmail.com. Send questions, concerns, anything. And I don't know when the next episode is going to be. I'm not putting myself on a strict schedule. This could be next week, could be the week after, could be bi-weekly, could be bi-monthly. I don't know. This is all still new to me. But yeah, just thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and take care.